So 30 years ago, I came to Texas living in a school bus. My first tiny house, I built it as I got out of college to go off and write the great American novel. So I arrived in Texas with $640 to my name, living in a school bus. Didn't know anybody, didn't have a job, but I had a dream.
This is another experiment in how small can we go. This is 80 square feet and was designed as one of two houses we built out of the Ugly Duckling, a house we tore down in one day. These are 95% pure salvage. I made them that way because that way people can understand the extremes. We're going to have a kitchen right here. This will be a bench. This is your living room, your kitchen, and your bedroom. And then this has a floating stair. This is set up with a bunch of storage. You can go ahead and maximize space. That's the obvious storage. Then there's secret cubby holes accessible from other places. It's basically built out of all wood and everything salvage we can do. This is a chunk, 100 years of growth out of a chunk of a tree that was 500 years old. I can't even import it anymore. Here I use stuff that was newer. This is long when we had yellow pine back in the 40s and 50s. We stamped it. This is certified. I should be able to use this, but it's salvaged. Oh. Guess what? 50% landfills are building materials. 50% of landfills are building materials. And then up here, this will be a double bed laying this way, and then this will be a closet, but it's also going to be possibly a little water closet. And this has a beautiful, beautiful glass. And then that opens up and goes out to a porch. Living tiny, I believe this is our path. We just have to create a product we can be proud to hand off to our children. This is all my scraps, just part of my scraps, scraps. I can't bring myself some way because ultimately we can bring those back out, make dog houses out of them, have kids could be out here making themselves a tiny house, a playhouse that gives them the idea they could build a bigger house later. I hate to throw things away. It's one of my big issues, obviously. That's actually pre-Civil War over there, all those beams right there out of tobacco barns out of Tennessee that I brought in years ago. I have enough materials in place to build 100 houses. This came out of a peanut warehouse in Brady, Texas. Been there for over 110 years. Took it out, bashed the end out, knocked it out, took the big beams apart, and I'm still using these up. This probably weighs 4 pounds. That means I get 24 cents for it when I turn it in for salvage. 24 cents. Now, say I may need a piece of steel. I want to pin something together. Go out and buy a 24-cent spike in the United States, made out of solid steel. Or would you believe this would make 2 sheets of that by the time they diluted it down with all the cheaper metals and made it thinner. This is so thick here, it's old stuff. Compared to the new stuff, the rust on the surface is the oxidation layer that protects it from rusting. New corrugated, by the time you see rust on the top, it's already rusted through because it's so thin that there's nothing left to protect. That's the difference.
So how do you get the materials?
I've had them in inventory. I had the largest collection of materials. I basically tore down houses. I'm still tearing down houses. Yeah, as I was talking about inventory, that's all hardware in there, and if you walked over there, there's lumber, and there's tin over there, and there's windows over there, but that's, again, that's only 7,000 of 70,000 square feet more. This is the Arch Brownie. There's a matched set, about 6 different houses worth of windows in this house. All the windows in original glass. Imagine a piece of glass, 120 years old. This glass alone, if you buy this piece of glass, is over $150 just for the glass. If you'd bought this in a store, maybe an architectural store, you might spend $200, $300. Then you have to build a jamb for it. The jamb is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 pieces of wood for that portion of the jamb. And then another one here, and another one there, and another one there, and another one there. So there's 20 pieces. And that's not even counting the outside. This is actually a piece of new we made to fit it, because we didn't have a bottom for this. We wanted some airflow. So we built this to go under it. And then that way, the weights are inside this section of the wall is all. And then the other thing we do is we don't weight the top and move them. We have insulation in this gap where normally the other weight would be. And that was the weakest point because the wind would blow in from here, come in around the trim, come through here, and come out the weight holes right there on most old houses. So we put 2 inches insulation on the backside so it can't get through there. And now we have an airtight weight box. Now if I want insulate, I put another one out here, a storm window, 4 inches out, and now I have dead air spaces, and it turns out 3 inches of dead air space will do the same thing as any energy efficient glass will do. And each of these are out of different houses again, so that's kind of cool part about it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 houses worth of windows to make one house. That's much more fun than going to Home Depot and buying $5, $75 vinyl or plastic or aluminum windows and screwing them into a box of plywood. Much more fun.
I have an English-American lit degree.
That's all. This is going to have an upstairs loft that'll actually wrap all the way around. No engineering degree required, no architectural degree required, no contractor license required in the state of Texas for me to do what I do. Up to 1,000 square feet, you don't have to have a license or degree.
And I got mine. Right here like that.
Yeah, I'm saying, you know, I want it to be, give me about that, you know, it's going to take that much to get that window in with the right trim around it. So we're not going out that end or anything, it's just a window.
Yeah, I figured my window's 24 for my hose.
So I could teach an 18-year-old kid coming out of school how to go build his own house, up to 1,000 square feet.
Volume went down a little bit, I think.
Why would you want to go ahead and indebt all these children? Why would we want to do that when we give them an alternative to go out there and pick up trillions of dollars of salvage that our great-grandfathers and our forefathers left us, knowing it would last 150, 200 years, so we built it so good, never thinking we'd go throw it in the trash.
Detroit, we threw away 20,000 houses last year. Cincinnati, we threw away 14,000 houses last year. All over the country, the industrialized cities are falling apart and crumbling, and we're throwing it away instead of transforming that into the treasures of the children in the future.
So you just find people sell you their houses?
Oh, they don't sell them to me, they give them to me. They want them to be saved. That's their mothers and fathers' blood, sweat, and tears. That's the point I'm making, is people give you houses all over the country to do this with. You don't have to go buy them. This is going to be the first example of a village where people can come and stay in them overnight and find out if they're claustrophobic or find out what it's like to sleep in something that's purely organic, the true organic house. It's basically built out of all wood and everything salvage we can do. And not count the toxins, because the most important thing here is the value on our kids' health. This example right here is only 63 square feet. It was an experiment by taking 3 sections of the house, 3 walls, not dismantling them, but leaving all the tongue and groove on them. The one's a wall with, you can see an outlet in the floor because it was a wall. And one was another wall between 2 windows, another wall. So I put them together to see what can we do if we don't tear it apart, put it back together again. So we started with putting the outer box together and then built the house around it. So when this is done, this actually folds down. This is all hinged. These are barn hinges. And when it gets to its side, it can actually be bolted in if you want, but it's all designed to fold down for transport. You remove the posts. That section on bolts, that section on bolts, that folds down, and this transports. This is a prototype for design where you'll be able to come up, tilt the whole house down on its side, transport it, tilt it back up when you get there, and then you're going to beat the codes on how wide and how tall before you have to have a permit. If we can escape permitting, I can drop houses off in the middle of nowhere and nobody actually will ever be knowing about it. And it just shows up in the air as a storage shed, because it can't classify as a house because it's too small to actually meet the legal definition of a house. It is a storage building. In this case, it's a storage building that happens to have a bedroom, a shower, a sink. Once it has this little treasure chest in there, actually a little potty. So what I did in here was to go ahead and make this so that, as I tell everybody, let's just say I got a big date. You know, as single guys, it's hard to get a big date when you live in a tiny house, because what girl in these days and age that was brought up to marry a guy with a bunch of money so you buy him a great big house? Well, when you come in, it's going to be all pretty, look like it's big, all right? So you come in, so you want to give the girl a little dinner. So you go ahead and take the bench down. Go ahead and take your little table down. You get a little dinner out. So you want to be able to sit down with her and have her nice and cozy and have a nice little meal, okay? And it assumes that you have a little place, a little induction plate. Takes about 10% of the energy of a normal system, and you can run it off the batteries under the house. So you can actually cook. Now, assuming that went well, and you just say you want to dance, you could lift this up and do a little dancing. Get a little sweaty, you can take a little shower. And if things are going really good, you can say, oh, by the way, this is not all my house. Please, let me show you the rest of my house. Now, these are a design I made that actually works very well. It's like a ship slide. You can go upstairs, up or down, forward or backwards. So the design actually has the handrail built into it. And the brace underneath it is because when I first started showing guys, I was going to use antique ladders. And these big old boys my age at 250, 300 pounds, the ladder rungs on the old antique ladders just about broke. So I had to make a ladder that would handle many, many pounds. This one does the job. These windows were thrown away by an apartment complex that decided they weren't good anymore. And since we build out of trash, it's kind of part of the theme, so I did it. I'm 6'1", hat on 6'2". This is about 6'7", and this is only 14.6 high. It's a standard height house. It'll go onto my trailer and travel down the road under 16 foot tall. But it was designed to ideally lay over on its side.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So the idea being, if you get a storm or anything like that, you can pop up, close your windows, and have the nice rain. Beautiful view. This house would be about $35,000, $40,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but hours and hours and hours to clean up the boards, take them out of the houses, to pull the nails, strip the paint. Insulation's $2 a square foot just for the insulation on it, but it blocks the heat. Radiant barrier. By the time it's done, we block over 100% of the heat through the roof and through the walls with our insulation and radiant barrier. It makes a huge difference, and it's a good example. All these prototypes that I build are to see if what I actually think will happen when you go in them, because space isn't a matter of how much you have, it's what it feels like you have. And I believe in what I call space magic. I teach how to design where it feels like you have way more than you think you have. So 63 square foot is the outer measurement of this. Inside measurements, 61 square feet, and this is not even countable in Texas because both the wall is lower than 4'6", so it doesn't count as living space. This is only on all my houses storage space. My bedrooms are not countable for taxable. So that means that I don't pay taxes on them as living space, which means I'll store my bedroom up here. This is set up here where, like I said, you have your little bucket in here and a seat. So it'll be built in where you can actually have your little commode if you have a late night emergency, you can get to make it to the bathhouse. This one's more designed to be a satellite house. I could be, I can take my shower in here. We have running water, city water out here, because we actually got city utilities when they annexed 3 acres of me at the end of my 43 acres. Unfortunately, they won't let me build my houses on that annexed land because I don't build the code. So I can't have them even sit over there overnight and have people stay in them overnight, because I didn't use double pane insulated glass, commercial, corporate required windows, and I didn't use new corporate stamped wood. Therefore, they're not meeting the quality. Now, they're much more energy efficient than I'm required to do, but then again, we don't build conventional, so they won't allow this. This doesn't classify as a kitchen. That won't classify as a bathroom. It's a storage building. That's all it is. Uncle Sam created a business out of building code, National Building Code. We now force you to use these double pane insulated glass, built with vinyl, that will go bad every 12 years. By the time they pay back, they'll actually go bad. Now, I don't use them. Why? Because why would I want to use a product that's made out of an oil product that I'm condemned to buy more oil product in 12 years when they go bad because they fog up and the argon or the krypton gas they put in there, whatever it is going to leak out. Instead of using a pane of glass on the inside, an old glass that was made ages ago, instead of the new glass, they poured on molten aluminum in order to get it so thin that they could put two pieces together and put that gas in the middle. Instead of putting an old window with 4 inches of gap and a piece of glass out there, which is called storm window, that gives you a 4-inch gap that now stops all movement of the weather through that 4-inch gap. So we found now that it's much more energy efficient to use old windows that were poured instead or thrown away than it is to use new windows. Now technically federal law says that I have to have safety glass in here. Well, that's if I replace it. If I don't, I'm not required to. Anything over 2 square feet, I have to have safety glass. You can see on this one, this dimple, this is where it was a big old dimple when it was made originally, and these are bubbles that you'll see because they couldn't really cool glass very well in 1890. So this is how it was made up until 1919. Imagine the amount of coal it took, the amount of effort it took, and we throw that away and break it without any regard for the fact that if you built a house in those days, you built it the hard way. And here's the biggest critical part about these tiny houses. When I shrink a house down, I've got 63 square feet, it's true. But the wall area, the surface area I got is not significantly different than if I had a 10 by 12 house. In other words, as I shrink my walls, I shrink my air more. Now, if I'm building out of cheap materials bought at the big box store, they're all outgassing, formaldehyde, plasticizers, vinyl that gives off a hormone replicating chemical that your kids think they're getting estrogen, carpet, the fibers that give you cancer.
Why would we want to do that when we can give them an alternative to go out there and pick up trillions of dollars of salvage that our great-grandfathers and forefathers left us?
Well, it's a no-brainer.
It's toxin-free and not condoned by the building industry, but absolutely the best thing we could do for our children.
So when I take one of these posts, a lot of times they don't even match. In this case, we actually have a match set. I'm taking, this has a grain on it, cypress grain on it. This tree was probably 600-700 years old. What am I going to do? Rape a rainforest and go get another one and bring it back instead of use these again when I throw them into the dump, which is absurd. Totally absurdity. This was the first one of the first ones. It was the weight room. One of the things I did is left this ugly ass paint on here. Why did I leave this place looking so ugly? So I could demonstrate what American paint generally is good for. Nothing. Nothing. I use American paint. It's a milk paint. It's a 200-year-old formula. It's milk, protein, and pigments. I use that now. Why? It lasts 200 years. The red house, my mascot out there, was painted 120 years ago with that paint. I put new paint on the trim, it's come off, but the old stuff, it stays on. So I switched to milk paint, or I use Swedish organic linseed oil paint imported at $41 a pint. Now this house in particular is a mess right now, but shiplap on the upper half, painted with a latex a long time ago when I used it. Latex turns out to be one of the worst things you can possibly inhale or put into your body. It's horrible, horrible, horrible on your immune system, and yet we use that. The floor was made out of 3-inch thick cottonseed warehouse floor that was soaked with cottonseed oil so much that what you see here after we sanded it was where the cottonseed oil and the sap boiled up out of the knots from the sun hitting it. And so I can pour water on here and it will literally beat up on the floor. That's why I like to use oils on the floor instead of polyurethanes, but this one happens to have an incredible amount of oil on it. This is also going to have an outdoor bathroom, and this makes it easy to not take up your interior space. So Murphy bed would be in the middle there, twin bed down below, and up above there would be a loft. And that's 3 kids sleeping on one wall, and then on that side, mom and dad sleep with their little privacy wall. And this is a 12 by 20 foot space. In America, we think, oh God, that's so small. Yeah, go to Japan. This is $800,000 in Tokyo. In New York City, get a space this big in New York City that's nice. So space is relative, but the way it feels is relative. I think I lived in this one for right close on a year. It's been lived in by the girl that's in here now for the last 20 months. So this actually is going to have, before we're done, probably another house sitting over there, house sitting over here.
Was land pricey around here? Was that something that you could
I still owe almost $500,000 on it. It's not like it's cheap. And I've been basically paying on that for some 10 years with this vision in mind. We can actually incorporate and become our own town for the purpose of having our own police force, having our own building code, having our own school system with a charter school if we wanted to, and set up our own rules and regulations about our businesses, our zoning, and effectively create a model that allows for tiny houses. I'm not saying everybody has to use salvage material to build a tiny house. If you got 8 kids, my goodness, you can't make it into my 300-foot house. But build a house with another master suite, a tiny one, and then a house for each of the kids as they get old enough to be able to branch off so that they have a house to start their life with, a tiny one. And build a compound or a village of your family you generate or create, because most of us don't have family anymore, because my generation pretty much wiped out the family concept.
Now, do you have codes and zoning, or?
I was informed recently that I'm supposed to have fallen underneath some codes in 2010. But they never bothered to come out at the end of the county here and tell this little guy that, oh, hey, by the way, you're now been dragged into this. For the 4 years prior to that, they never told me they were going to pass it. I still haven't actually received official notice that I'm under it, and I'm under the impression, in my perspective, I have 43 acres, I'm actually a ranch, so I'm actually outside the scope of typical common restrictions.
So you even have someone in a van?
Yeah, Jim has actually been staying here. He's 70 years old. Idea is that people can live in all sorts of spaces comfortably. If you have a main house where you can help get fed, you have a bathhouse, something like that. The bathhouse we built here is actually a men's side and a women's side. Again, it's built entirely out of scrap, and it's built in an interesting design that I came up with where we have double layers of insulation, so that the outer layer you can come out and do all your preparation after you've taken your shower or use the commode. The inner layer is also insulated and has the air and the moisture in there and the fans to create an induction and a natural cooling effect that so far seems to be working very well. These were old barn doors we used. This goes into a little bathroom over here. All we do is take a barn door and cut it round on the top. And then we use shiplap on the walls, which is the lowest grade of wood used in the old days with the knots and everything. Over here is a really cute little shower, and this was done by a retired Marine. This was just one of our experiments using just broken tile and some seashells. Now the shingles on the wall that you're looking at are roofing shingles dating back to about 1900, and they interlock on each side, overlap each other by this much, so that there's ribs in here to keep the water going through. And then we put an underlayment, the same as on our roof, that seals all nails, all holes for 30 years. So even if the water were to get through here somehow and get behind there, it still goes down the liner and back into pan and under the drain outside. So it never could leak even if it gets through the metal. So it's a lot of things that we don't take for granted. This is a door, for example, 1 inch thick. Old days we could do that. Wood was really strong. You could make a door very thin. Wood panels, solid pieces of wood with the edges beveled down that are then slipped into a groove. This door dates back probably over 100 years, as does the hardware. And this was all handmade in mold and pressed. This is actually probably about 1900, 1910. And you can tell because it's a wrought. It's a pressed pattern and not a cast pattern. Same with the mechanisms. This little mortise that's in the door right there, all they can break on it is a couple of springs inside for the most part, and I could fix that with nothing more than the tines off of a leaf rake. Why not use hardware we can rebuild and reuse over and over again instead of new stuff? Code says we can't. For example, the sink out here, any one of these won't meet code. Why? I put 2 faucets on it, and I can't be smart enough to not burn myself if I put my hand under here and it's hot. So I need to have it in one spigot, so in case it's hot and I'm burning myself because I only turned on this one, I can turn that one on and cool it off. Hopefully there aren't that many morons left on the planet that we can't at least have 2 sides to a faucet. That's an old bar sink. It had 4 faucets on it. It was from a commercial bar sink. This obviously wasn't worth a whole lot. They're modern. Again, new stuff made out of plastic designed to break. Drives me insane. But sometimes you just can't find the things you need salvaged and be able to use them. Over here, for over 100 years, I might point out, we managed to do this without scalding our children and burning ourselves to death. But then along came the government and decided, oh no, I'm willing to do battle and defend, verbal battle, I say. I'm willing to stand up and fight for the rights of us to be free, but I can do it better if I become an incorporated town and there's 50 or 60 of us, or I can hold up to 200 houses in here, or 200 people, and actually create something where other people come here to listen, to look, to study, to learn, and then take it off and replicate it and let it morph into all the other things it can morph into.
Welcome to Temple Tantra.
This is my home. This is Temple Tantra. The house is almost magical for me. I figured if I was going to do something big in the tiny house field, I'd pick the gypsy wagon, because that's the biggest gypsy wagon you'll ever see. This whole house is 10 foot wide by 23 foot long, including the porches. It was a junker frame I built when I first started 8 years ago.
I don't have any power at this point. I haven't run power out here and found myself not caring.
The house is actually comprised of probably 30 to 40 species of wood. I've used everything from mesquite, longleaf pine, loblolly pines, that's cypress, that walkway. There's like a plank that's out of a cypress tree. And then we have really a range of walnut, rosewoods. So this is the downstairs storage space. It actually has a kitchenette, which I don't use at this point because I actually eat in. In my world, we actually have a larger eating area house where you have a kitchen and you don't make redundant ovens and kitchens for everybody because I'd never hardly use one. Oh yeah, I do have water here, don't get me wrong. I have water out here. This is a nice little trick if you ever want to do it. You buy a 1 gallon bottle here and you take the other gallon, tip it up into it, and then you got 2 gallons of water before you have to change it out. And all you have to do to change it out is take a bottle out and put another bottle in. The back porch in this case is my bathroom. But all this is an insert with a bucket in it and sand on the side. So it's composting human manure toilet. I don't have sewer out here, so that allows me then to take that out and to go ahead and compost it. Even bury it, because I look at I'm sitting on a ranch and around me are about 150 cattle sometimes. And cattle drop a whole lot of crap on the ground. And I look at it kind of like I drop some crap on the ground, but it's not as much as those cattle. And ultimately mine's going to be digested back into the nutrients in the soil like permaculture is supposed to be, rather than stick it in the ground or send it off to the city so they can go ahead and send it downriver to somebody else. I prefer to go ahead and keep it here and retain the nutrients. And so I believe in human manure toilets, and the battle will be fought at some point. Oh, what I'm going to do is change out the faucets. That actually, where my toothpaste is over the top of where the shower thing is. This is supposed to be where my sink was supposed to be right here. Okay. And they got it backwards. So that way when I turn on my water and just go over there and have my shower right over there, and then my pot, my little toilet's over in this corner. So this is going to have glass. I'm just going to put 1/2 inch thick glass all the way down into a pan, so it'll look like you're outside, but you'll actually be behind glass in that area. And that's just so I don't rot out my floor and my walls, but they'll still be able to see everything behind it.
Yeah, I noticed that there's wood in the bathroom.
Longleaf pine is a waterwood. It's the closest thing you can get to cypress of the 77 species available. And it's the hardest of the pine species. It is the hardest of the wood species. Only thing harder and more durable is white oak, and it doesn't have the other beautiful characteristics. Longleaf pine, you can look on the growth lines and you'll see every dark line is a year growth. So there's 10 years, there's 20 years, there's 30 years. That's what it takes to grow a tree now and harvest it. There's 40 years, there's 50 years. There's about 60 years of growth in that 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch board. So that tree was growing that slow, maybe 150 feet tall. And we came in and slaughtered it. Just literally in 1830, we had 5,000 square miles of longleaf pine trees. These are the last of the masters of the earth in our part of the world, the hardest, strongest trees. Survived fires and everything else, just like the sequoia. 1830. By 1934, not only the 15,000 square miles of loblolly pine that was a virgin forest around it, but the 5,000 square miles of longleaf pine were cut down. It wasn't until 1934, I believe, that we actually required the lumber companies to even pay in cash. The amount of energy I save just in the glass on this door, if you can imagine from this, and the coal it took to melt this, and melt all this, and then form it, and the coal it took to form this glass, which happens to be some beautiful French glue chip, and form all this, that's a lot of heat. You're taking sand and turning it into clear liquid that freezes at a high temperature so you can see through it. All that energy right there is more energy than I will use in heat on my house in 50 years. 50 years! That's one door! Not to mention the artistry of knowing gold is added to molten glass, and then when it freezes and dries up, it's red in color. So whenever you see red, that's the most expensive color in stained glass you can get. That's gold in liquid form. These were hand blown as a large bubble in a pit, picked up, set on the table, cut the end off, cut the end, split the side, and lay that baby out flat. Up until about 1919. That's no small task. Then you ship it on a car, a wagon, and a train out into the middle of Texas and put it in.
Only rich people had big panes of glass. Why? It took a big ass bubble to make a big pane of glass, and then transporting it was very difficult, so it was expensive. This particular glass is French glue chip as opposed to American glue chip. French glue chip, they put the rawhide glue on raw skins on the glass and lay it out in the sun. And as it dries, the hide pulls the surface of the glass off and creates these beautiful feathers that on this side you don't feel, but on the other side, you will actually feel the texture and see the texture where it was chipped off the surface. And the bottom is spoon carved. And that's using a special hand tool that causes a little scoop to come out. When you tap it with your hammer, you tap it from both sides and you just scoop it out. All this is spoon carved, and once detailed instead of white on white, it's a piece of art that took somebody days to put together in a time when they maybe got 5 cents for the day. Stained glass was all made by people that knew what to mix. Each of those pieces, somebody was smart enough to know what mineral to add to the glass to make that so beautiful. This is an old fire truck ladder called Trojan ladder, so every step has Trojan written on it.
This comes up through about 5 species, go through black walnut on the top step, and then up to a floor that dates to the 1890s, the tongue and groove, double-sided, double beaded.
See the tongue and groove on the edge.
This shows you how strong you can actually hold the whole place up with an inch. This whole floor is only 1 inch thick. You'll notice how cool it is up here? Yeah, this is the Venturi effect working, by the way. The Venturi effect is a principle which the force of the air coming in then presses the hot air out the top and cools in the process, because the way I built my house is the vents at the top are the most critical. And then I have no need for air conditioning for the most part.
So this is your closet here?
Yeah, that's all the closet I have, and it's not very well organized, but the idea is that you can just close it off if you want. But otherwise, yeah, it's a confessional. It's an appropriate place to keep a confessional. I look at it like, here's my bed. And then, of course, the bed has storage drawers underneath it. Or if I wanted to, I could actually fold it up, stand it up on its side, and make this a much bigger space. I built it so that I could raise it up to the ceiling if I wanted to on pulleys, but it became obvious that I didn't need to do that, and it ate up too much space being in the center. My houses represent the seedlings that I offer to show people that out of what it would be trash. How many tiny houses you been in like this? I can do my qigong in the morning and not worry. It was designed so I can disconnect right here and lift the whole top off, transport it, and then crane it back on again.
So you're saying the ceiling comes off?
The whole roof, from here up, is designed with 6 bolts to separate and be craned off of it. And that's what you see the outriggers right here coming out the end of the house. That's what they're for. You can actually strap onto the longer one and lift up the top, and the shorter one's tied to the bottom. So yeah, the whole thing lifts off at that point with 6 bolts pulled out. But I'd never expect to do that because, of course, I'm never leaving. I'm here where I'm going to be.
We'll go back to where the greenhouse is going to be. This is actually sitting atop a fairly large space. There's a 40-foot container right here, and that sits pretty much partially under my house. And then when this is finished, you're looking at what's going to be the greenhouse. This will all be fitted out with the rest of this coming across. We'll glass that in and then put metal on the sides that we can lift up so we can protect it in hail and windstorms and take snow load off and stuff, but then open it up when we get sunny days. We can control the temperature for the tropical plants we might want to grow inside. And then below we can grow plants like tomatoes upside down in a bucket with LED lighting faster than we can grow them right side up on the surface. Because in the summertime with the heat, you can't grow anything that has water in it. It sucks it all out of there. No watermelon, no cucumbers, nothing. But you go underground, no problem. Not to mention there's another 20-foot deep hole underneath that's for the water. There's a water hole or a basin underneath it. So we can collect water and be able to grow under, which is where, of course, we can control the weather. It's 65 degrees underground here year-round. Just as in the past when the Lakota and the Hopi went underground for 200 years. People think, oh my God, it's not possible. Well, yeah, they did it. I dug down about 450 million years. What's that mean? How do you dig down 450 million years? That means you dig a hole deep enough that you go down in the earth 450 million years back. What does 450 million years look like? Once upon a time, there was a giant forest over our country. There was a big glacier came upon us instantly, and a great cold came upon us instantly. 10 feet of volcanic ash, bentonite clay right here as you're walking down, came from a volcano in southern Gonzales County. It's not even talked about. As you see all this ash, imagine that falling on top of what was prior to that, an incredible, incredible topsoil of 4 to 6 feet deep, and it has roots still supple that you can actually hold on to coming out of the ground that are 200 million years old. That once I flooded this all the way up to here with water, that's millions of gallons, we exposed that this was actually topsoil beneath 10 feet of volcanic ash that snuffed it out and gave us our last ice age. Now, before that, as we're going down, 450 million years ago, starting about in here, lo and behold, boom, Yellowstone, historic record. As we enter the ice age and have these massive climate moves, the gamma radiation comes through the atmosphere, causes major clouding, major upper atmospheric clouding, which cools the Earth especially fast. But as we add water in, the planet gets bigger because of plasma coming through our magnetosphere and forming more water. We have these movements and shifts. So this period here was all really good growing period, and there was massive forests and trees and all that stuff. And then before that, you go into this period again where it's all clay, bentonite here, and sand, glacial sand. Up at the very top, red, lots of iron. It's a red clay, very hard, good for adobe. And in between there is that sand, that glacial sand. And we're only 450 million years back. So as we went down deeper and deeper, what happened is, and this goes down another 10 or 12 feet, this is water, 65 degrees with heavy bentonite clay in it. So this water, while it looks kind of grody right now, is just dirt floating on top. And we have frogs actually living down here now. But it's 65-degree water. Once we drop, there's a couple things we can drop in to desilt it. We could actually make it clear water. And we could actually have fish down here growing.
And you want to farm fish down here?
Well, that's one of the things we're going to do, yeah. I can put this water in my house through a car radiator, blow a fan through it, and I got 65-degree air blowing through my house upstairs. That could be a solar fan. It's operated by nothing more than a wind outside, and when that one turns, a belt comes down and turns this one, and it turns this one and blows air through my fan.
So an air conditioner?
Thermal? Yeah, air conditioner. Only power?
Why would you farm fish down here? Why would you put fish down here instead of above ground?
Above ground, and you can't raise trout in the temperatures the water stays here because the water is way too hot now. But I can come down here and by raising fish underground, if it's 130 degrees above ground, no problem. Or let's just go to a worst case scenario for the people who believe in the, shit hits the fan factor. Does anybody know I have fish down here? Does the government know I have fish down here? I hope not. Otherwise, they'd come and take it to feed the troops when I need to have the kids of our villages be able to be fed.
What there?
Where?
The bus.
Oh, it's an RV. It's just a trailer buried underneath my house. There's also a little trapdoor in my house that goes down underneath. And in the event I want to have a quiet night because there's a concert going on, I may not want to listen to music or just want to go ahead and get away.
So how did you get it under there, under your house?
On a crane, same way I got my house on top of it. In an ideal world, every main house where you come to eat dinner is also where you open the trapdoor and you go down below. Because in Texas, this is not taxable as living square footage. This is just a hole in the ground. Now, if I happen to put a wooden walls and wood doors on that little section right there and turn it into living space, well, gee, I just happen to do that. It just happens to be a hole in the ground. If I do that 10 times over, I now have 65-degree temperatures with no microwave effect in the event that maybe we decide that the cell phones and all these towers are actually eating up our lives. If they crank them up too high by mistake or otherwise, we might want to be underground instead of that. I got 8 different radio towers shooting at me at the top of this hill. Down here, I got none. It's a 65 and 70-foot walk into safety.
You dug underground just to see what's down here and then you came up with ideas, or you dug under thinking?
I dug under, we just wanted to maybe put a container underground to start with and got carried away.
That's another 15-foot deep below the water. And I capped it with this railroad that they were going to throw away that I got for free. And then I can put another layer right above our heads, right here, and we'll have a second floor. And that's all habitable. And then that allows us all this below if we wanted to flood it and have water. And then have other underground cavities over there that didn't have water in them that would allow us to then go ahead and be able to have a lower cavity to drain them to. And in doing so, make it all habitable. We can go down underneath any house that far and build just like that, and it won't cave in. We're going to go down below and take a peek at the underworld. This is, you can buy these about 2,500 bucks. This is my old insulation, the cutoffs. I put in the sides to keep the dirt from touching the sides of it as much as I could because dirt causes corrosion and basic electrolysis. This is just old isonine from what we use on doing the walls on tiny Texas houses. Insulation. They spray it on, then they cut it off. So I thought, well, I can use that, but I don't need as much as I took. So I've got more spaces to fill at some point. Like if I'm gonna put a tank under the ground, I want to have this around it so that it doesn't have dirt on the tank. This right here has a gap between it. Right now it's too close because the damn crane came 2 days early.
Okay, then in here, dun, 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 home away from home. Okay.
Oh, this is just set up like it was original. So this gives you kitchen. This is the problem though. Water, look what happened. He put it too close to the wall. That is the wall. That's dirt there and dirt there. And I've got to tear this out.
Anyway,
So it goes. Now this is the view back where you were, right through there.
the whole subterranean sections will be connected from here to another village, for example. And so you can move around if you had to with a minimal amount of exposure above ground.
There'd be a bed here, a bed back here. So in theory, two people could come down here and sleep comfortably and be here for a little while. You have the refrigerator, of course, would stay, and then there's a bathroom that has a commode, the sink, and a shower. All of it's in there.
But you wouldn't be able to use it underground.
Oh, sure you would,
right?
because it's basically it's a 12-gallon tank. You just lift it up and dispose of it. You can see above us is all where my house sits, right directly above us. And the passageway over there, right over there. See over there? That light coming from above?
Yeah.
That's my trap door.
So you climb out of your house right there?
Oh, there's a door in the bottom underneath the dog bed. You just lift that door up
And then
I
you
come
climb
straight
onto
down.
the roof?
Well, there's supposed to be a ladder over there. There's this telescoping ladder. That's what, this was not supposed to be here. This is supposed to be a little further up, so I have a circular stairwell built out of steel. It's supposed to be right in this spot. This is just cut out. We just cut it out with a torch. There'll be another door over here. So I can open this door up and we can go out from this side once I build a catwalk. And I didn't want people walking out and just going that direction because it's a 20-foot drop to the bottom. So I'll have a railing on there. And then we're going to cut a hole right here. And this hole right here will allow us to drop all the way down and get water and bring it up and have our gardens in here and have this thing pretty much lushly growing with reflected light, because I can actually bounce light through mirrors down here, and LED light. I can use solar panels up above to create light down here, so it's no longer dependent upon whether I have clouds in the sky, it's 130 degrees, or it's 70 degrees up above, or 20 degrees above. This I should be able to maintain temperature in. If I can maintain 65 degrees, more stuff grows in our country in the 65-degree belt than for food to eat than any place else. And the more of this soil I spread from down below, the richer and the more stuff I have growing. So I'm digging down to capitalize on the soil below the 10-foot clay line. I'm taking a permaculture course and trying to learn some stuff like Jeffrey Lawton has. I'm on here trying to take his course and learn more about permaculture, because I believe we can live in a food jungle. And the food jungle basically means that we just grow everything around us that'll feed us as part of our culture. Once we accept that and not try to grow something that's beautiful and doesn't produce anything of value, then we'll start making progress on the path toward self-sufficiency once more, instead of being dependent on big corporations supplying us with food at the big store. Prices are expected to rise 25% in food, and as we lose sun and have more storms, there's a bunch of disasters about to happen, and people are just not paying attention, and it's okay. There's nothing you can do but try to prepare those who want to pay attention to it, and if it doesn't happen, hey, we got a great deal going. If it does happen, not so great a deal, but better than what everybody else has going. Over here is going to be one of the villages. Over there is going to be another village. Each one's an acre or so. They can contain maybe 10 houses, but not all the houses will necessarily be full-time living unless somebody gets voted in, because nobody gets in without a vote of the community. That mound over there behind you is going to go up 20 or 30 feet more. It's going to be terraced with blue cobalt tile on the rising parts and then flat ledges that we can grow on. This was a foundry at one time. And so what we have here was a massive amount of metal and stuff and pieces and parts in here, just like everywhere you look. This has been in the ground since 1985. A lot of this is stainless steel and things that didn't rust all through here. The weight of just one of these. Now, if the lights went out and I said, man, I need some of that, I want to form some of that, where do you think you'd find it at? So the idea is I'm burying all this again into this pyramid. This mound doesn't look much from down below. When you get to the top and consider how much dirt we're piling up, and this will be another 20 feet taller, which will put us above the tree line and give us a view all the way around. With a telescope, you can probably see Houston. See, we're at the end of the hill country. After us, 30 miles away, is the old shoreline of the Gulf called Flatonia. So in other words, if the Gulf were to come back up to its historic highs, that would be 30 miles away, which is all within the 500-year floodplain. And this highway out in front of us has actually been underwater and shut down twice since 1998. If something were to happen, everything from here, Flatonia, all the way to Houston would be underwater. So I'm going back down to the original earth, getting the clay out and making a large basin to capture the water. And at the bottom of the ravine is going to be an amphitheater, so we can have Shakespearean plays and concerts and stuff at the bottom of that ravine. This is going to capture all the water and be pumpable up to here then. This had nothing in it before. I now have beaver living on property. I have raccoons living on the property. I have frogs all over the place, dragonflies flying around. None of this was here before. It was basically a wasteland. I bought it in 2006 in pieces and parts. I got it all together, 43 acres. So there's enough here for us to have the organic gardens on the far side where all the topsoil from another 135 acres was dumped. So the 43 acres stretches about a mile of frontage. That building over there, that's where the main place is called Salvage Fair. The market to bring all things salvaged, all things crafted, all things that are not new, toxic making materials into a market we can learn how to barter and trade whatever grandma left you on a trailer for barter credits and food and clothes and skip by maybe the dollar. And the idea is to show in a model how your generation and those behind you are going to survive if the lights go out. The whole village will be off-grid, on-grid. Yeah, we like electricity. Sure, we're going to use it. But if it's not here, oh, we'll make our own. And we can make our own in a lot of ways. Thermal, solar, if there's sun, if there's clouds, there's no sun, we can use wind. This is what I lived in for about 1.5 years while I was working on Temple Tantra. It's Barth, and it was the top of the line motorhome you could buy in its day with an aluminum skin, double air conditioners, inside built-in vacuum cleaner system, ice making machine, microwave. That was the deluxe, deluxe, deluxe. And you compare that to what they drive now, it looks like you're driving the first Volkswagen Bug. Now it's about to get occupied. Jen comes here tomorrow night. She's checking out one more visit before she decides if she's going to move here or not. If she comes, she's going to stay in here while we build her house. She's going to do our bookkeeping for enough money to survive, and then the rest of it goes toward making payments on the house we're going to build. And then I can say I sold the house for $5,000 or $10,000, so they're going to be taxed for that. For present purposes, if a house is on my 43 acres in the villages and the standard price is $10,000, then they cannot tax any of them for more than $10,000 value. So this is the first year they put the rounded front on. That's a 13-panel front, and it's the first year that they did the rounded face on the Airstream, so it's a classic. It's actually in pretty much original vintage condition. So what I'm going to try to do is preserve it. We haven't even cleaned it hardly. This is something somebody called me and said they found this. It was on the ranch, and was I interested? Did I want to buy it? And I was like, yeah, I want to buy it. And they carried the note. Let me have it for a year. Original panels and everything. I did have to replace this, so I did beadboard. See, Airstreams are not actually a frame. You can't actually just add a bunch of weight to them because they're actually aluminum like skin, like an airplane. So we did this. This had a heater in it, I hope. And usually when you see these, by the way, whenever you see this right here, this is friable asbestos. Okay, when you're dealing in the salvage business, this is the worst of the worst, okay? This little fiber right here, this is the friable. What the word friable means is that it can come off and turn into a fiber like this. Now, you'll notice it looks like just a lint, just like fiberglass, little fibers. And now there's different kinds of asbestos. Some of it's in caulk, some of it's in the glue under tiles, and it's not going to hurt you much. But this one, because it just blows like this, and it just goes all over, and you get one of those fibers and you breathe it in, that's mesophilia or asbestosis are the two names for the tumors you get out of that. Well, it turns out it's just anything in your lungs that won't dissolve causes a tumor. Carpet fibers that won't self-destruct, that won't take stains, etc., and your child's climbing on them and sucking them up while they're young. 30 years for this to turn into a tumor, 30 years after it goes into your lung. So your 6-year-old child, when they suck it in at 6, when they're 35 is when the tumors will start showing up. They're down here where all the gases are. So you buy a new RV and where's all the gases, heavy gases at? They're down here. Where's your child at? He's playing on the floor. He's down here doing this, sucking up all those fumes. So when you build a tiny house, please, 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 please. There's so little air inside this compartment. If you put toxic materials in here, and this happens to be a plywood that outgasses formaldehyde, and this is a sheetrock that has 40% fly ash, which is a toxic waste unless they mix it with gypsum. The carpet that you put in there, you put the particle board or the chipboard, or you put plywood that outgasses formaldehyde because you bought it so you could build a cheap house to get off the grid. The latex paint you use is poisonous to your child. The vinyl windows you use give off gases, it's poisonous. It's all coming into this tiny little cubicle of air that's airtight. And unlike a big house, there's nowhere to dilute it, to hide it, to move it, to get it away from you and your children. So if you're going to build a tiny house, please get an old classic like an Airstream, get an old classic like a Avion or any one of them, and make that your road house. If you're going to build a tiny house, build out a salvage, put it on a trailer, move it where you want to move it to, and take it off the trailer and use that trailer to make a living instead of wasting it, because your tires, when you go to use them, are going to be rotted, and your brakes are going to be frozen, and your truck is probably not going to be up to par for what it should be to haul the weight you're hauling, and you probably loaded it wrong by putting all your storage in the back or up in your loft, and you're not have a good center of gravity. And all these things were taken into account by the guys that built these. Why? These guys built airplanes. These were the engineers out of World War II that didn't have anything to do. And they created the most incredible stuff. These were the guys building the planes for Howard Hughes that created these companies. They figured out how to do it right. These guys run around building boxes that are basically no aerodynamics to them. They're walls to pull into the wind. They won't handle a 60-mile-an-hour wind barely. But then they come around the bend through the mountains, and all of a sudden here's a 50-mile-an-hour wind coming at the front. Now they're facing 110-mile-an-hour forces on it, wind forces, with tires that are old and rotten, possibly because they sat there for 4 years before they decided to move it. And with all the conditions there to lay that thing on its side. So my feeling is that unless we start informing people, they aren't going to know the difference between this having a center of gravity about here, so it won't roll over, and then building a trailer that has a center of gravity up here, so when it gets hit by a heavy side wind, it'll lay down on its side, still connected to their truck. Happened to my dad once. Don't take that chance with your kids in the car. So many things people need to know about pulling a trailer that they're not taught. These are the cautions that must be taught, or this industry will hit the wall and many people will be suffering for it. And then it'll be discredited, and I don't want it discredited. I believe this is our path. We just have to dodge the bullets on the way and create a product we can be proud to hand off to our children. That one's sitting on 60, 30-gallon barrels, supposed to be a houseboat. It's going to have pontoons on the side and sidewalks. That's a houseboat. And he brought me the bottom and asked me if I could build a top for it. Then he decided he wanted to put it in the Gulf. And then it took us about a year to work that out, so we finished it just recently because we got back out of putting it in the Gulf of Mexico. That's a shower to your right. It's got a little commode area with a porta potty, a 1-pint flush with a little 10-gallon tank. But that's a 10 by 12 structure. And then it's got a very small queen-size bed in it. It's a Murphy bed. And the backside of it has a dining room table built into it. Loft up above. 50% landfills are building materials. That means if we don't throw the building materials in there, they'll last 50% longer. it's a no-brainer. Why not take it and turn it into careers and houses and a future for our country and our children? And we're selling China iron and steel for $60 a ton, so that when I go out to try to replace this tin, I have to go to them. We don't have any more foundries. I mean, I can't even get the iron ore out of the ground for $60. Here's another good example. Cast iron weights out of windows. That puppy's 7-pounder, it says. There's one 8-pounder. This is called pig iron. If you buy one from me, this is only $5. That's a 6-pounder, little one for a small window. The windows lift based on how much weight is on the side. Too much weight, the window flies up and can't get it down. Not enough weight, if you lift the window up, it sags, it just drops back down again. So these weights were used to determine the speed at which a window rose up, the size of the window, the thickness of the glass, all those things came together to determine what size weight went in the side. I sell these for $5. Couldn't begin to make them for $5. Not even in the wildest dreams could I. I couldn't even buy the material to make them with for $5. So obviously, it pays to save those where you're at locally and use them where you're at locally, because that way, you don't have to go to China to get the ones you need to replace it, because that's not a place to make them anymore. If we have these every 150 miles and work with all the other salvage sellers around the country, we'll have tiny house facilities. Part of the pure salvage living renaissance. Okay, on the wall there, you'll see a layout of several things that we have going on. This is the topo map. And we're sitting right here and showing you that the green is higher elevation. This is Flatonia. That's the town at the end of I-10 right here that is the border of the old Gulf of Mexico. Past this point has been underwater most of history. In other words, it's probably going to be underwater again. Again, we think everything's so stable until it's not. That's a typical picture of what a village would be like, with 10 or 12 houses, and then you have a common house in the middle like you see over there. The idea being to have a central eating area, but everybody have their own master suite. 10 houses at 400 square foot each is only 4,000 square feet on a 46,000 square foot piece of ground. Still leaves a lot of extra room. Oh good, she's interested in leaving the brown Archie here. Jean, the one I built the brown Archie for, they're supposed to go to Ohio. She's decided maybe she's going to leave it in the village. I told her I'd give her a $700 a month income stream off of it. And then, because that's, you know, I'll rent it out and let people stay in it overnight and try it out. And see, in Texas, it's a test drive. It's always for sale. It might be $250,000. But technically, as long as it's for sale, there's no bed and breakfast tax. It's a test drive. And you're just paying to participate in a survey, which is the Pure Salvage Living Survey about how it feels like to live in a organic house. It might be a long-term survey or a short-term survey, but the idea is that if it's over 30 days, bed and breakfast tax doesn't apply anyway. If it was under 30 days, there's a bed and breakfast tax of $10 to $12 a night. That is such a cool thing, because that's one that people will pay to come and see as part of our tour. And so the tours then become a source of income to help pay for the village. Anybody who lives in the village won't have any cost to live here. No lease on the space, no electric, no utilities, because the whole idea is that they all participate in making it all happen. The market happens and everything else happens. We all benefit. So there's no tax, because the taxes are paid by the people who pay to park here, to come to the things. In my world, in an ideal world, our villages, we can join together, form our own town, so people can come and learn how to take trash and turn it into their occupations, their homes for their family, their future, their security, and a way to get off the grid and so much even off the system where you don't need money to survive if you can build a home out of trash. In your kitchen on this one, I designed, I don't like microwaves, modern stuff, so you can put your convection oven or your microwave in there, be able to open the door, check your meal, slip it back in. When you're done, make the ugly thing go away. If we could get away from this 5,000 square foot, you got a bedroom, your own TV, your own bathroom. You would get to see us maybe if we eat dinner together at the table. This is designed to have this as your dinner table. Be able then to have a twin bed or something, and blow up blood or something like that if you want to have it here, or to leave it underneath there. We need to teach children skills. How do you live? How do you survive? How do you take care of your body? How do you house your children? And how do you create an environment that won't make them sick 30 years from now? That is the challenge of our generation now. So the idea is that if we go ahead and demonstrate it's possible, if we raise one generation with this in their brains, that we can do this, then just like we destroyed our culture and our country in one generation, my generation, we can rebuild it. That's my hope.